Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Diggory, and I'm president of Singers in Accord Choral Ensemble. And on behalf of our entire organization, I'd like to welcome you to this evening's conversation on the how, when, and what of choirs getting back together to sing live indoors in churches, schools, and the community. Singers in Accord is in its 12th season as a singer-led, singer-managed ensemble. With no permanent artistic director, we, the singers, select and collaborate with different conductors for each project to give a distinctive experience to our ensemble of singers as well as to our audience. To date, we've collaborated with 18 different conductors. Tonight is our 6th webinar in the series we call Conversations in Accord. These sessions are opportunities to learn more about the choral art and the incredible people who make this art happen, the conductors, composers, poets, and teachers of singing. In case you've missed any previous conversations and would like to hear some of SIA's recordings, please visit and subscribe to our YouTube channel. One video in particular is our latest virtual choir recording of the premiere of Nancy Grundall's piece called Toward Justice. As always, we appreciate your engagement with Singers in Accord, and should you find our work worthy of your support, please visit the Support Us page on our website. During the conversation tonight, please feel free to submit any and all questions you have, and we'll get to as many answers as possible. You can submit your questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. I'd next like to introduce our moderator for this evening, Jan LeClaire. Jan is a founding member of Singers in Accord and the ensemble's artistic team leader. So Jan, I will now turn this all over to you.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you everyone who's attending this evening. I know we are looking forward to a time when we can be together in the same rehearsal room and performance venues, but there have been blessings from this technology, and having you here with us tonight is one of them. It's my pleasure to introduce our conversationalists, our panelists this evening. Linda Burk is also a founding member of Singers in Accord, and she was part of our original leadership team when we started in 2009 as we evolved from World Voices, which was led by Carl Erickson. Now that she is recently retired from a career of public education, most of which was in the Osseo School District, we hope she will be a returning member of Singers in Accord. Linda's undergrad work was done at Lawrence Conservatory of Music and her master's from the University of Minnesota. She's been an educator at all levels of public education, also at Inver Hills Community College and McPhail Center for Music. She's been a professional vocalist, including with the Dale Warland Singers, and a lifetime church musician, liturgist, and coordinator. Currently, she is a teacher and coordinator at Faith Music Academy, a part of the outreach for Faith Lutheran Church in Forest Lake. She is also Faith Lutheran's traditional worship arts and music coordinator. And she directs the adult faith choir and is looking forward to, hopefully if the weather cooperates, having her first in-person outside rehearsal with her choir members tomorrow. So thank you for being here, Linda. Another one of our panelists is Taylor Quinn. Taylor is a current member of Singers in Accord. His undergrad work was done at the University of Northwestern in St. Paul. Taylor is a busy performer in the Twin City metro area, a past member of Minnesota Chorale, a soloist with the Rochester Symphony, a soloist and section leader at Westminster Presbyterian in Minneapolis, and we are honored to sing with him in Singers in Accord. He was also a member of Summer Singers and Pop-Up Choir. As a conductor leader, he has worked with the Land of Lakes Choir Boys, and he currently leads Egan Women of Note and is the Director of Music and Worship at Elk River Lutheran. Thanks for being here, Taylor.
Thank you. My pleasure.
David Mennicke is one of Singers and Accords' favorite conductors and guides. Of our 28 concert series in our 12 years of existence, we've had David lead us in 4 of them. And he's also advised us on auditions and organizational structure. So we've really appreciated that help. David did his undergrad at St. Olaf and his master's and doctorate at the University of Arizona. For 32 years, I think, if my math is right, he's been a professor of music and a coordinator of music ensembles at Concordia University in St. Paul. His Christus Chorus is internationally and nationally known in their touring. In 2015 and 2016, David was named the ACDA Minnesota Conductor of the Year. He's a well-known guest conductor, clinician, adjudicator. He's in the Minnesota chorale and is their tenor section leader. We've been blessed to sing a couple of pieces he has composed, and he also conducts the senior and men's choruses at Bethlehem Lutheran. And he just got done doing, I believe, his audition for Minnesota chorale, right, David? I'm sure it went well. We'll be back to talk to Linda and Taylor and David. But first, we are going to hear from Stephanie Trump. Stephanie was not able to be with us tonight. She's enjoying rehearsing with a small group of her high school choir members. She is, for the last 25 years, Stephanie has led choirs at Robbinsdale Armstrong High School in Plymouth. So I think I wore the same outfit, but the hair might be a little bit different, and hopefully you won't see much of me anyway, because Stephanie was a fabulous guest last Thursday for us. She did her undergrad work at Augsburg and her master's at the University of Hawaii. She is a well-known clinician, presenter, adjudicator, a member of MMEA, Minnesota Music Educators Association, excuse me. She's a recent section coach for all state choirs. She's an adjunct instructor of music at the University of Northwestern in St. Paul. She conducts their women's choir. She is currently the president of ACDA Minnesota, and we really value her lens both in the high school world and as a leader of her colleagues. And again, this was recorded last Thursday, and I thank Dan for his technological help. And then we'll be back and able to take your questions and comments while we visit with Taylor, Linda, and David. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie, for joining us and for giving us a lens to your life. I expect that everyone that's tuning in on Tuesday, hi everybody, and we are recording this on Thursday afternoon because Stephanie has a Tuesday evening rehearsal. But I really wanted her lens as an everyday practitioner at the high school level, and what a great ear for her colleagues as president of ACDA Minnesota. So congratulations. How are you? How are your students? How are your colleagues? A lot of us have worried about our friends figuring out how to do a job in this challenging time. So how are you all?
No, we're okay. I will say okay. I'd love to say more than that and better than that, but we're still really working through all kinds of things as we've returned to school. It's been a big trial, and it's been a challenge for everyone in every walk of choral life. I acknowledge that for sure. I think some very special and specific challenges for high school students. I still love my job through all of the trials for sure of this last calendar year. My district specifically has been out since last March 13th, I believe, and we just came back on April 6th. So it was more than one calendar year of lost experiences and trying to make choir work online, which all of us know is just not really a thing. It's a version of what we know, but it's just not what we know. So there have been a lot of, I'll be honest, there have been a lot of tears, a lot of frustration, a lot of even anger from my students and from colleagues and just for myself working through things. I know that my students and my colleagues and myself just negotiate, I don't know, just a sense of depression, a sense of demoralization, a sense of minimization as I look especially at middle school programs around, with my ACDA lens, middle school programs around the state whose choral and band programs have been relegated to just an extra thing that they try to fit in during the week. And it's workable for a period of time, but what that does to teachers and to students has been really overwhelming over this long period of time. So it's been a challenge, and finding the lemonade through all the lemons and finding the great moments they're there, but you really have to work hard to find them. And when we're on a normal course and our normal trajectory with students every day at the high school level, at the middle school level, in this kind of secondary care and or K-12 thing that we do, there's joys every single day. You see them. And, in Zoom land, the joys are just really difficult. So we finally come back, at least in my experience, my students, just in the last week, we've probably been back for a month. And just in the last week, they're discovering their voices and their personalities, and finally classroom management and rehearsal management and pacing are finally joyfully becoming an issue after all these months of really no personalities. And they kind of brought that Zoom mentality to their classroom work. And I think other teachers would probably agree with that. So that's been very strange. I would say the other really important piece of this for us as professionals, as we're kind of working and growing through this time, is that I think we think of COVID for sure as singers and what that's done to minimize our ensembles at all levels. But the other piece I know very, very true for Minnesota ACDA is our work on equity and diversity and all of the just social unrest and civil unrest in our society. And those two tracks together, those two kind of crises together, I think that's made the COVID situation more unbearable, more difficult, because it's pressure. It's two things kind of pushing against one another that we as choral professionals want to fix. And in all honesty, we have the ability to fix through our art and through what we do. And it's difficult to not be able to really just get hands-on and to get active to motivate students to think in different ways through their music when there couldn't be music for such a long time. So it's left us in quite a conundrum that we're just kind of pulling out of.
I'm awed. Wow. Amazing. And we wish you all the best, and your students too, and your colleagues. Are you looking, it's May, graduation?
Yes.
What will that look like?
Yeah, graduation for us at our school and probably for schools around the state, everything, protocols are changing and kind of lifting all the time. We're planning a live in-person graduation. It'll look very similar. Graduates get 2 tickets out on the main field, trying to just work within the capacity limits of outside venues and staying within that, but it will feel very normal for kids, especially now. The whole, masking and distance thing is just not so strange anymore. So to be on a field and be spread apart and be wearing masks is all okay. Last spring, that would have felt even stranger. So we're very excited to be bringing a live graduation for these kids that have missed out on 3/4 of their year, senior year especially. Last year's students missed out on 1 quarter, albeit a really important one at the end of the year for us in our choral program, the time of year where we sit back and really celebrate the work of the seniors and their 4 years of singing and their development and, all those high school moments that are important. So this year's seniors get some of that, and they'll get a graduation that'll feel a lot more normal, though not completely normal, but a lot more normal than typical. So that's a great thing to celebrate. And same with concerts. I think lots of us are back to modified concert venue, modified audiences, modified situations, but we're able to do something live. We're able to do something live streamed. We're able to record. Just being in person and singing in person has really been the victory in the last couple of weeks. Strange to be saying that after a lifetime of work, a career full of work, but that's where we're at. So we're grateful for that, at least.
So a strategy that you cringed at the early onset, but that you've decided in some form it may be a blessing that you keep? What might that be?
Oh, that's such a good question, because I would call myself not tech savvy. I'm not tech afraid, but I oftentimes am quoted by saying, I just want to throw my computer out the window when things don't work the way that I want them to. So I would say, I mean, a victory for me is really becoming much more tech savvy in this world, in this time. I think that's important. And one of the keepers for me has been, and I think for teachers who do what we do, is all of the software programs that have come up alongside of us during this time to assist in learning, teaching and learning. So I can think of specifically like skill building, sight reading software that helps students to be able to do it and study and learn on their own at their own pace. That has been a big victory. And I meant to do it before the COVID thing struck, to get in there and learn it with colleagues, just a couple around the state who really espoused these kinds of things. And COVID forced us in that direction. And that has been a blessing. In fact, just heard a student comment today, I really like that. It's really good for me. And I like to get in there and do the work on it. So that's been a great victory. I'm hoping not, Zoomland is a good place to meet, isn't it? When we don't have to get in our cars and take more time on the edges of meetings, and you can still kind of have victories and personal conversations. But I'm hoping not to have to spend a whole lot of time in Zoomland in the future. I think that's probably true for all of us as well, especially with screens full of, people that aren't there, adolescents that aren't there, and will go back to bed during class, which is usually the case.
Oh my gosh. For students who weren't going back to bed, I wonder if there's been a heightened individual awareness, individual skill building. Singing is can be such a magical thing. You hardly even know how you're learning. But if the technology has lent itself more to the individual skill building piece, are they more aware perhaps of the magic? Like, wow, I am actually growing, learning?
That was our dream, is that we find individual victories and kind of pursue that avenue. And I really have discovered quite the opposite. I think they've come back to school with less confidence. They're less comfortable. Their oral skills are very much lacking. Maintaining harmonies and the things that were simple before are now very difficult. Their sense of confidence is far lower. And I would call it kind of choir paranoia, where you just really have to push them to sing out and to be able to make the mistakes and make them loud and proud. That's a thing. And because I truly believe that in Zoomland, I don't think many of them were singing much of the time at all. So, we could deliver great instruction, and it was the reverse when we were talking about teaching. And with my student teachers, I always like to talk about just how did you deliver content and what was their response to content? And in Zoomland, you can't gauge their response at all. All you can gauge is the delivery. So if teachers are thinking about how did I, then we know the reverse is true with students sitting on the other side, coming into the classroom saying, what about me? What about me? How do I? I think it's made us more in this educational setting, at least in the secondary level, it's made us much more aware of self, but not in a confident way, more in a questioning way.
From someone who's managed a couple Zoom virtual choir things, wow, listening to yourself. I think I sat in on an early ACDA and the mediator who was trying to help us adults, be confident. Don't even listen to it. Just send it in. Come on. Don't be shy. And it's, wow. And we heard from our members that the technology and the hearing yourself without your choral community, the challenges. It is spring, which means it's registration time also. And I was looking at a CDC document today where music was kind of lumped under extracurricular. And for those of that, no, we are curricular. Yeah, so how are you doing with that?
Well, personally, we've fared pretty well. But again, through the ACDA network, I cannot say that that's true of lots of high school programs. In addition to enrollment numbers, K-12, which is a major, major factor, families and students have found other ways to be educated. They've chosen private schools, they've chosen charters that were more accessible than the public schools were during this time. Maybe lost forever, may come back, we're not sure. There's all kinds of digital, virtual options that have opened up to students who can be successful in that way. So numbers are going down in school districts, despite even some districts with lots of land that are still building and growing. And as a result of those numbers going down, enrollment numbers, program numbers have changed, and staffing has changed. And staffing is going to get cut when enrollment numbers go down. And, you know, I've never been one to, in my situation, I don't know if I can say spoiled, but so blessed in the radar doesn't always point to music first. When we talk about cuts, we look at building programmatic cuts and cutting from all departments where there is excess. And we never want to think about education as excess, but that's the way it's gone. And we are still making those equitable cuts across our building, but I've not seen that all through the state. Some districts would tell that story and schools tell that story, but statewide, I think there are quite a few that are taking some pretty significant cuts in the arts, especially in performing arts. And it is part and parcel to where we've been, the fact that kids have been online and they just have lost touch with the magic and the reality of these performances, which are the performing opportunity, which is why this spring is so critical to get these kids through something, to offer them something, some opportunity to stand on stage, to sing together for an audience, to receive applause, to have their work acknowledged, and to make some art together. That's going to be really critical to how we all move on.
I would guess that middle school is especially challenging right now. Yeah. So I hope that you get to have some of those kids follow their path, and that you'll have great underclassmen to kind of reset the bar, reset the gauge. Ensemble size being smaller is a healthy thing, but then you have to convince administrators that you need multiple sections of those smaller ensembles, perhaps. What do you hear students and families at the high school level, what are they saying about vaccinations? At the college level, and we'll be asking David Mennicke on Tuesday, and at the church level, at the adult level, which is Singers in Accord, it feels like it might be easier for us to talk about the benefits of being vaccinated, but when they are high school kids, that's a different thing. So what are you hearing about vaccinations for singers?
Well, I teach the upper levels at our 9 through 12 high school. And when I asked for a show of hands 2 weeks ago about vaccinations, and this was my concert choir of juniors and seniors, all eligible at that point, it was 16 and up. It was probably 3/4 that had already received vaccination, one or both. And the rest of them I asked, and there were, I didn't even count the number that didn't raise their hand. Statistically, I think what my concert choir echoed about interested in vaccinations or already vaccinated is probably what we're looking at in the general population. So that's heartening. Kids are going out, and now it's been extended so the younger kids can begin to go. And schedule conflicts are a thing. They can't come to class because they're going to get their COVID vaccination. So that's becoming more and more predominant for younger students.
That's, like you said, that is heartening. Mm-hmm. One issue that we, as an adult community-based choir, who we don't have our own auditorium to distance in, or what are you hearing about facilities and ventilation and spacing, distancing, that is definitely something we feel like we'll have to look around, we'll have to address.
I really think right now we're well handled because all that protocol was in place in the fall, and we're just simply following through on what had been extended. And we've remained pretty consistent with that. I mean, spacing is a thing. We do not have control over the ventilation. We're simply supported and encouraged in knowing that it's okay and that our rooms are okay. And it's way above our pay grade, in the music realm when you're teaching to know the specifics of the ventilation. So we just have to believe that that's true. And the district officials have gone through and made sure that that's the case. So that is out of our control. But the masking and spacing certainly is and has been. And, as I think to fall for students, I really truly believe that although I've been an optimist, I've tried to stay an optimist through the whole thing. I really believe we'll be back to normal, masking optional. And what that looks like for adults, I think may be different than what it looks like for kids as we head into the fall. But I will say, just for the experiences, and I know, David probably will talk about this too, and all of us can really talk about the idea of masking and distance for singing it makes it really difficult. And we're still so excited to be back together and making music, but the distance today between my furthest soprano and my furthest second bass was yards, 50 yards by the time you put it all together. And trying to make that into something that feels like it's supposed to feel and has the potential that they're capable of has been difficult. The kids feel it. So I just have such hopes that we'll be back to normal and they'll just be ready to just rip off their masks and to start to sing. And if they're not, I'm just hoping the language masking optional is always a thing and that we can, and distancing, optional. Choirs can always afford the possibility for people to be spread out and for some people to be closer together. Even 3 feet feels so different than 6 feet. 3 feet is a comfortable singer's distance. 6 feet is an eternity. So just to get back to that kind of normal, I could see always having more space than we had before. But I sure would like to return to something a little bit more normal. That's my hope, fingers crossed.
Excellent. And yes, we're all praying and crossing fingers, toes, whatever we can. Right. And the news is looking more positive. Mm-hmm. I expect that there will be people that are going to be disappointed that they can't ask you live some questions or for some resources. We'd be happy to share a website or a link during Tuesday's chat, or if you would like to point us somewhere now, that would be great too.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I will give that some thought before Tuesday and provide if I can. I feel a little bit like I'm one member in the cog of the K-12 system that's been working through it, and I come with my own vision. There's certainly a lot of people out there who've been experiencing all that I've been experiencing, and many who have a lot more expertise in the way of finding resources. But I certainly will cull those and provide anything that may be helpful.
ACDA will do your summer listening session in August.
We will. Yep, we're working on protocol for that, and we're a little beholden to our host campus at St. John's University for what their protocol will be. Like all things, you follow whatever the host is requiring, and we plan to do that. And I think all organizations moving forward will give thought to one conversation we're having now, and I'm involved in another organization for fall in guest conducting about the showing proof of vaccination. What kind of obligations should organizations feel an obligation to ask that information? Because it really is private information. And, how do we proceed with that as ACDA of Minnesota? And it just depends so much on where we all end up a month from now. And like the times have been changing all through, every month there's new information. So we'll kind of see how that all rolls. But yes, we are on in full and everybody's modifying to some capacity for summer events, I think, which is very smart.
How about audience considerations? I mean, you have your student/singer obligations or considerations. How about for audience members? What do you said for graduation, they get to guests and then live streaming. And are any of your spring concerts limited to guests? Or yeah.
All of them are. The only option that we have, we've been limited to, with kind of a frustrating, we wanted to use our gymnasium, not because it's a great place to have a choral concert, but because we could get everyone in. And audience seating is limited. So we have one concert of our upperclassmen where we're inviting only the senior parents. And we can't fit everyone in. So thus the live streaming and thus the recording. And we did do a sequence of events that week. We'll have my chamber ensemble will be able to perform live for their parents because that's a smaller group. And I just think the directors are thinking way outside of the box to what can happen when you can't just open up the auditorium doors for open seating.
Right.
And everybody's just being flexible. And we've got some good, events that have happened in our school prior to our concerts from which we can build and take some information on their experiences.
That's fabulous. Well, we're going to stay optimistic.
We are.
I honor the challenges for this last 3 semesters, for you, for your colleagues, for your students, and for all the choral community. So we wish you the best, and we thank you for your lens into your world.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. I would look forward to the conversation. I'm sorry I'm not able to be with you live.
Soon. Thank you.
Yes,
and for our friends, Stephanie was slotted for last fall to be a guest conductor for Singers in Accord. So we hope we will stay connected.
Absolutely.
Great. Thanks again, Stephanie.
Great to meet you.
Welcome back, everyone. When Dan gets done sharing his screen, there we go. Welcome back, everyone. And now we are live back with Linda and Taylor and David. I wondered if you wanted to piggyback or respond to anything that Stephanie shared. Perhaps, how about the technology piece? And Linda, would you like to start talking about the challenges and blessings of learning new technology?
Yeah. Well, yes. The first thing that I just wanted to say, though, is I wanted to reiterate something that she had said, is that we are kind of all in this together. And that's one thing that I just want to continue to lift up and acknowledge, that there is no one path that has been the right path. I think people have found what is comfortable for them and for the situation that they're in, and found success in that. And we just need to celebrate that with every unique situation that we find ourselves in. Each community is different in their COVID response, and certainly each level of music making is. So kind of, when you ask the story of like, what challenge would you have that has been maybe frustrating, but ended up being a blessing, it would be this technology piece for me, because I realized at the beginning, when we weren't having anyone in church and we were just going to be streaming online, and that we couldn't gather together to sing, that the ministry of music as we knew it in our church may not survive COVID, because we had people that were in a high risk, at that time, at the beginning, were in a high risk category. And so I couldn't gather them. And so I kind of had tears. I was talking to my colleagues. Our staff at church is very close. We talk about things and challenges. And I was committed to having this continue, not just with one person singing at a time, but with a community of people, and continuing that. So I delved into doing tile videos and figured out how to do it. And from the very first week that we started it, I think we started it in April already, we have made 1 to 2 tile videos absolutely every week for worship. And the choir is proud to rehearse online and submit their videos to me each week. And it started off just being audio. And then they got the courage to start making videos and submitting them every week. And they do it every which way. So sometimes when they were doing audio, people would call me and sing on my answering, on my voicemail. And I would lift that out and go and do some magic and try to make it sound better and put it into the mix. We had people, obviously using their phones, submitting things that way. And then when they got into videos, some people would have like family members, younger family members, video them to teach them how to do it. And then how do you send it to me? But I have about a little bit more than half my choir submitting videos every single week. And they're faithful members. They're on Zoom every single week rehearsing. They wouldn't miss it. So that is a blessing. It's been a great opportunity for them.
Congratulations.
Well, it's them.
Taylor, I know that you were drawn to the technology also, including with your Egan Women of Note. Congratulations. I've seen some of their work on Facebook. It's fabulous. And they also, you can tell they're proud to be contributing. And you do some solo things. Is it Thursdays when you're the guy in the big chair, or Thursdays with Taylor? So all wonderful ways to stay connected through technology. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's the technology part of it for me has been so fun. It's been so fun. I've always kind of been drawn to creating, videos, or just doing like studio work too. So it's been quite fun. It has been an interesting dynamic when you are working with choirs that aren't getting together on a regular basis. So I enjoyed the technology part, and I kind of used it for the benefit of both of my work. With the Egan Women of Note, we rehearsed once a week on a song. It just felt like I spent about maybe 35 minutes per section. So soprano 1, soprano 2, and alto. And then for 35 minutes, it was basically a voice lesson for the section. And then we looked at the music, and I just talked through some of the things that they would need to know in their section. And then after about 3 weeks of one song, I had them submit videos to create a video performance. And I think, Linda, you're talking about tiled videos where you have the different tiled singers and they're all together, right? Like this virtual choir.
Exactly. So the nickname of the choir is the Brady Bunch Choir, right? That's
a good one. I should use that.
Yes.
So technology, I love that what Stephanie said about not necessarily tech afraid, or not tech afraid. There was so many people like at church that were just afraid of technology, and yet I was proud of those people who were tech afraid, who actually faced into it and learned and were successful at using the technology to do music. It was such a lifeline for them, and they were grateful for the opportunity to do it. So I'm just happy to come out of this pandemic. I mean, we're not done, but I'm just happy to know that for those who were able to do the technology thing, that they could use it as a lifeline. It was a lifeline for them, and I'm just really proud that they were able to learn it. So.
Thank you. And David, we're all jealous that I think you got to actually be in the same space with some of your singers. I saw some work even at the very beginning of the school year. You were outside under a tent. I saw some videos of your choirs. So I hope it was like that. Did you get to work with your singers live all year? How did you figure that out?
We did. Last spring, everything was shut down, for the last 6 weeks of school. And so we just muddle along and figured out how we could meet on Zoom, but didn't, weren't able to do anything really musically at that point. But we were able to be face to face at Concordia with everything last year, and had remarkably minimal COVID rates. I didn't have any transmissions in the choir. We were able to do it by 30 minutes at a time in a room, always masked, always distanced, and moved to another room, breaking into a lot of small groups. And then we would do some recordings and things. We did a little bit of virtual stuff, but mostly it was recording of things. Or like if we were in chapel, we'd sing in the adjoining room, and the sound would get piped in to the people that were in the sanctuary. And then we put together like an online Christmas concert, which was recordings with, and we did it more simply. Did very little coordinating of the video singing with the audio singing, but did projected artworks, things like that. But we did do a project in the spring where I had both small ensembles that were student-led and the full group, where we did a bunch of public domain type Renaissance-y sacred music, but about a dozen pieces that we then made available for free to churches to use. And about 60 churches made use of those recordings. And then we did a semi-stage, very stylized stage thing of the St. John Passion by Schutz that came off really well. Again, it was because it was not a large group, it was like 30, 35 singers, and we had large enough spaces that we could be spread out. And we also had the students sign a covenant at the beginning of the year, saying, we're going to ascribe to certain behaviors and, avoiding situations that are dangerous, avoiding bars, things like this, social events where we would put ourselves at risk because we wanted to try and keep free. And then Concordia had a real clear protocol. If people became in contact with somebody, they had to quarantine. So we were very blessed, and we were able to continue. And the thing that my takeaways that I got, so the technology things that were great, it was good to be able to have the resources. We could share things online with people for learning music. It was good that we could share things out to congregations and churches, so we had even a bigger outreach. That was at Concordia. And the big takeaways there was that the student ownership that happened, both with the covenant and then with the leadership. I couldn't run everything. I had to break into smaller groups and let students lead, and they did a wonderful job with that. And the biggest thing is that it was, even with all of the public performance and the touring and the social, a lot of fun things we associate with choir, that those were taken away, but it was enough to be able to just get together in some fashion to make music. It was worthwhile. At my church, we did do virtual choirs. I'm not sure how, Linda, I'm amazed that you did that every week. We were doing it about once a month with chorale. We get together and do a Zoom rehearsal, and I would pound out notes and get them notes and directions and do vocal warm-ups and things like that weekly, and devotions and prayer requests. And so we try to keep the community going that way. But then our associate music director did a wonderful job of producing all of those recordings, and he would do one with like the chorale, one with a women's group the next week, handbells the next week. So he kind of rotated out the different ensembles. So he was doing a lot of that production, which, as you know, Linda, is enormously time consuming. So I was blessed, and my colleague Sherry Spear at Concordia, the things that we did do technologically, she did. And fortunately, I also have a lot of students that love to do that stuff. They put together, like the Schutz St. John, one of my students did a terrific job of the audio and video editing. And we were able to collaborate with our theater program and they did theater productions this year. They did like 3 camera shoots of productions with students masked, and so you didn't have a live audience, but they put together and learned that technology. So that was a blessing that they learned those things. So it was a lot of learning, a lot of just gratitude for whatever we could do together. And that was very encouraging, that they were just thankful to be able to do whatever was possible, and went out for it and stayed committed. And by the end of the year, we were able to do some small performances, limited audience, spread out in a large space. And like for our home concert we did, we're in the room for 30 minutes, and then we walked to another room and watched a video of something we'd done. And the room was airing out, and then we came back and finished up at the end someplace else. And that was just, audience just simply by invitation came. But live streamed that then as well. So again, it was a nice way to get some outreach happening. So that's how, that was kind of our year and experience. And again, we were I assumed when we started the year that we would be in school for 2 weeks, then we get shut down. I would have to go. So I spent, like many of us, the summer learning all sorts of possibilities and researching all these different options. And we used some of those, and but was thankful that we were able to still stay in place, in person, and to make music.
That is a world of blessings there. So
Yeah,
congratulations to you and to your whole community. That I think there are a lot of jealous choir directors that are listening to that synopsis, and how fabulous. I wonder if each of you might give us a short-term lens. This is where I'm at in this week and next week, or now that we've got a different set of parameters from the state of Minnesota, and then perhaps where you see yourselves and your groups, if there's any change for the fall. So David, you've probably already had graduation, yes?
We did. We entered on April 30th, and they had, graduates could invite 2 guests, and, the faculty did not process. Had a brass quartet of all the people that already were fully vaccinated. They played. I had small ensemble, like a dozen students that sang one piece, just sang the Insular Jesus, our alma mater, with Palmans at the end, and left the room. And it was much more, the audience was spread out, and they had patterns. So we were able to do it. And then each of those ceremonies was a little bit shorter, normal, but they, and then what they did do is they also had a camera then on the stage. So as the graduate went by, every graduate went by, they had a big picture of the student who was graduating and their name in big lights up there, so you could see, because you don't see in a huge field house like that, you can't see who's on the stage, but you could see the person's face. And so that was a neat addition that took place. But we were fortunate to do that. I know church choir, again, that demographic, they're all vaccinated now. So we actually, and with the governor's lifting the thing, we actually, I did a bunch of parking lot sing-alongs, in the fall, and we did one a few weeks ago, but we actually went into the sanctuary, large space, spread out, family units stuck together, but actually sang for, 30 minutes or so, just through some things, and it was wonderful. And they were all masked on the inside. So, but again, that vaccination is a game changer.
We have fingers crossed. We're starting to believe in the hope that's on the horizon. Mm-hmm. Taylor, how about for you? You before we started tonight's meeting, you talked about preparing for summer, what that felt like, and perhaps some goals for next fall?
Yeah, this summer our choir we'll get together once a month outside. You know, another saving grace has been the fact of weather for us, and the fact that we can feel safe about being together and singing together outside. I just felt indoor was so risky. So yeah, this summer we're gonna get together with the choir just socially, but also sing from some psalm books that I put together. Just maintain that, and then I'm going to use this summer to try to figure out a plan for this church choir going forward, because you know, in one way the pandemic has offered us a chance to reset and to reimagine, and that's what I'm using this summer, is to just reimagine how I'm going to do the choral program, the choral ministry at Elk River Lutheran. You know, as far as the Egan Women of Note, we are done singing for the year. There's really not much we're going to do this summer, but we will be looking at what we're going to do for this fall. We will get together somehow. We will, because 1 year of virtual rehearsals and performances is enough for all of us. And so so we're gonna make some plans for this fall to get together. Not quite sure what they are, but now we now know what guidelines we can follow and what will allow us to be together in the fall.
Thank you. And Linda, I mentioned in the intro that hopefully the weather will hold and you'll get to be outside with some of your singers tomorrow, yes?
Yes, and I am not certain that everyone that I work with in my choir is going to be vaccinated, and I respect that and honor that. And so what I am developing is just a series of choices for them. So our rehearsal outside is going to be on Zoom. So people that wish to stay home and continue to sing with us online can do that during that same rehearsal. I continue to have their music with reference tracks with me singing their parts online so they can practice from home as well. And then the people that choose to come together can stay with their family units or stay with their bubbles and choose how far apart they're going to be, because they'll be outside. Some people will be vaccinated. They'll be with people that they're singing with, and they'll both be vaccinated. There will be some people that won't be, and you can choose. Like for me personally, I'm going to stay masked and I'm going to be 6 to 12 feet from people. And that's completely their choice about what they're going to feel comfortable with. And we're just going to talk about it. I went to the Synod Assembly this past weekend, and it was wonderful that Bishop Lull talked about just talking about things openly and honestly and keeping that conversation going. So whatever situation that we have, we will face, we'll talk about it, we'll work through the difficulties, and hopefully we'll have more guidelines for singing indoors, unmasked with vaccination soon, I'm hoping. I mean, if we can be outside at ballparks and yelling, I would think that we could be outside singing easily. And hopefully that'll also translate to being inside soon as well. One thing that I've really appreciated about this is that I think we figured out ways to be so flexible, and the people that we work with are being flexible. And that's what I have, we always think that sometimes people are set in their ways, but this has shown us that people are not set in their ways. You just give them opportunities and they come running to them. And it's wonderful. I've had people that have actually joined choir in COVID because they are able to learn from home. They don't have to get a babysitter to be able to come to rehearsal. They're able just to submit a video so they don't have to be there on Sunday if they have family commitments. They're saying, I really like this and I want to continue to participate this way. So even after we're through the pandemic and we can sing together, there probably will continue to be a video component for those people to participate who are having a difficult time fitting it into their schedule and committing that way. So choice.
We have talked a little bit about being able to use technology with Singers in Accord also for people who were absent or ill or we have a leadership team meeting scheduled, we Singers in Accord, on May 27th. And we have a lot of food for thought. You are all experienced friends of Singers in Accord. We'd be glad to have some guidance from you. We know that things change quickly and that where we will be in September is not where we are now. But if anybody wants to throw out this is something to keep in mind, I know that I'd sure appreciate it. If that's putting you on the spot a little bit. David, you were always a believer in distancing. We always, the physics of sound was one thing that you kept in mind, and we sang a good distance apart.
Mm-hmm.
I was interested to hear you talk about changing rooms, smaller.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, well, just the, the more that everybody has read about aerosols and the way they spread, I mean, if you've got a good solid mask, that's close fitting, and there's at least 2-ply and made of the right materials, that contains a lot of the aerosol spread. So, it doesn't balloon out and create enough of a density of aerosols that would cause other to be affected. If you're at least 6 feet apart, some earlier on they were saying 10 feet, but it was revised down to just 6 feet apart in a space. And then if you limit your time in there to 30 minutes, that aerosol cloud you will not at the end of that point you should leave, because by that point the aerosol cloud starts to become big enough surrounding you that the density might begin to be transmittable. So again, you want to have it's good to have a large space, large ceiling, but the 6 feet at least, a good mask. We were fortunate, we actually got these singers masks for only $12 a piece that we got tailor-made in St. Paul for us. She did that, the one, and they worked great, and they were of good material, and we could wash them, and so that worked out really well for us. And then finding out what in the HVAC system in the room is, what the air exchange is. You want at least a couple of air exchanges before you go back into that room again, and usually that's about a half hour. Allow that one. So just keeping it simple. Masked, 6 feet apart, 30 minutes in the room, allow at least 30 minutes of venting time. And that was our practice this last year at Concordia. Even if we leave a room and then we leave it venting, and if somebody wanted to go into a voice lesson, that meant that room was going to be, you couldn't use that room again for 30 minutes after that, or any aerosol spreader. But we did that, and it worked, and we didn't transmit. So I think those are things. I know that other places that did that as well. St. Olaf, Concordia, Moorhead. I think Gustavus tried to do that as well. Luther, they all did those things, and and again it worked. And as long as people are being careful, and it can happen. Now with the vaccinations happening, that just really just changes things a lot. The main problem is who's not vaccinated. Those people would still have to maintain those protocols, and unfortunately in churches, we have all the children that are not vaccinated yet. So it's kind of some phrases I've heard, the least of these among you want to be aware of. So in churches, maybe that's a good way, benchmark for people to be aware of. You want to make sure that they're protected because you don't know yet. Fortunately, children don't seem to be very, very few get severe cases, and they don't seem to transmit as much as adults or young adults or older people do. So, the signs are hopeful, but there still can be any variants and things that can happen. So we're still not out of the park yet, but the signs are good. I think Dan had asked about, can you expect a community choir, expect people to be vaccinated or expect them to do protocols, or is that an invasion of privacy or that? I think as long as the community choir is not publicly funded, community choir can set its whatever standards it wants. So you'd have to negotiate that with your own membership and figure that out. I know there's schools, universities like Yale, all the Ivy League schools are requiring vaccinations for people to return. Concordia, we're not, although which is kind of strange because we require people to have mumps, rubella, tetanus vaccinations in order to register. So it's kind of the same. It kind of be the same thing. So it may be that might be a standard to check. I know this Matt Cullen's group of singers, the singers, Minnesota Choral Directors, he's requiring that for anybody to continue in that group, they have to be vaccinated. So I know people have different opinions and different comfort levels with that vaccine, so we want to be aware of that. But again, look at the science of it and just see. It would seem that, if we expect people to be getting polio vaccines, if we expect them to get in schools and require these things, this rises to that level. And this has got so much science behind it right now. So many tests. I mean, millions of tests and experience. We've got a pretty solid experiential track record to make good decisions.
Thank you. Taylor and Linda, if you imagine rehearsing with Singers in Accord next fall, again, we will know a lot more by the time we start around Labor Day, but what might you imagine? Taylor, do you want to go first? What would be most comfortable if you imagine coming back for the fall? What would make you most comfortable?
Well, at this point, I think following the protocol and the routine, kind of like what David described. At this point, the mask mandates at this point they're so new and it's a bit of a chaos. It's chaotic right now, and for me to sing with Singers in Accord next time in the fall, at this point, it would be following what David has done at Concordia, where you do half-hour rehearsals, you allow for ventilation, you do masks. That just seems to be the common denominator we all can just agree on at this point. To be honest, that's what I would prefer. I would also prefer to get a different mask. And so, David, if you can share that design, because I had a hard time singing in my singer's mask. Sometimes I just was out of breath. It wasn't pleasant.
It's hard.
Sure.
And Linda, what do you? We hope to have you sing with us again, but what's in your imagination?
Well, right now, it's hard to imagine what things will look like in August and September, truly. And I guess that's where I land, to remain flexible, to remain open, to remain educated about what to do. And if decisions need to be made for September based upon information now, then make those decisions, but then be open to the information and how it's going to change. I think it's the wisest thing to do. And then to continue, as you guys have modeled, to continue to be creative in offering musical experiences that matter. And you've continued to do that this year. And everybody that I have been, seen who has been participating actively in choral music this year, that has been their commitment. They just haven't sat back and said, I'm going to watch and see, or I'm going to let this go for this year and we'll pick it up again next year. Everyone has really tried to continue to do music the way that makes sense for the people that they're working with. And that to me is our job. And so, yeah, I would just say, listen, stay educated, and be flexible with what's happening with COVID.
Wonderful. I don't want to end quite yet. I'm going to ask our panelists to open the question and answer to see if there's anything you'd like to comment on or follow up on. It doesn't have to be now, but there are some excellent comments and questions from some of our attendees. And you can type an answer, or if you'd like to answer live.
Would you like for us to answer them live? Because I have one here from Nancy.
Yes, sure. Jump on in.
Okay. It just says, how do you make your choir recording tracks for each of your Sunday pieces? Do you sing all the parts or play the parts, or have a quartet sing the parts? So what I do is I have our accompanist make an accompaniment track and lay that down. And then I go through and sing all of their parts. Yes, laugh at me for singing bass, but I do. And if I can't reach the note, I do plunk it out on the piano if it's too low for me. But I sing all of the voice parts as a reference track for them. And then I export, I do it in GarageBand. I export each one of the parts separately. And then I put an SATB one together, or whatever voicing it was, to use during rehearsal. And then for rehearsal, that's what I stream out to them. They mute up, that's what they sing with. And then if they want a particular part, we go through, they let me know, we go through their particular part, we go out and sing it again. They practice. Because our rehearsals are shorter, I ask them to practice on their own in addition to our rehearsal time. And they do. And I ask them to, when they submit their recording, just that they felt comfortable singing on the recording. So they always have me in their ear. I don't know if that's good or bad, but they always have me in their ear when they're singing, so they're not alone. When I first started doing it, as some other people had mentioned, I had people that just didn't want to send me their recordings. They would text me and they would just say, I just can't send it to you. It doesn't sound very good. And I just tell them, hit send, don't worry, we're all in this group together. And then we start each Wednesday night. I stream the coming Sunday's video to them, so they hear it and they're like, wow, that isn't what I sounded like. I said, yes, but you have all of your other singers together. This is what you sound like. So that's the system that works each week.
And I agree with Nancy's, that was a lot of work, and how wonderful for your church and your choir.
They are a gift. So I'm happy to give that gift to them each week.
You all work at churches, and that has been a spot where Singers in Accord has found rehearsal homes. But we also know that churches get to make their own decisions whether or not they are comfortable renting or opening spaces for outside community groups. Have any of your leadership had discussions about that?
It's interesting at Bethlehem, Julia Fahey's Partners in Praise group, which is kind of a resident choir there, they were practicing actually starting this fall all year at Bethlehem in the sanctuary. So they let them practice in the sanctuary. None of the choirs practiced at all this year in the sanctuary. They were very careful about that, but they let the other group outside in. we would do, I would recommend, I think what I'm hoping to do is to make use of the large sanctuary to rehearse in with the church choir. And so community choirs, I guess I would suggest asking if it's possible to rehearse in the large sanctuary, just because it's a bigger space. A lot of those spaces may not have great air exchange, depending on the building, but it is still a big space. And there's an advantage to that, as opposed to a choir rehearsal room, which is much more contained.
Okay.
You know, but what you might do is see if you can rehearse in a sanctuary, then go into another area of the church, and then go back to the sanctuary later on. Kind of rotate where you're at. And so finding out a way you could do that at a church. Again, the advantage of if you can use the sanctuary, it's nice though, because it's a large space, or a fellowship hall or something like that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Taylor?
the Egan Women of Note, we typically rehearse at Falcon Ridge Middle School in Apple Valley, and we would rehearse in that vocal music room, but we're going, that's way too small. There's no way we can do that. So luckily in that same building, there's an auditorium that we could rehearse in, and then there's also a cafeteria. And gosh, I was reading a thread on Facebook, and someone called it an auditoria or a cafetorium.
They're
so funny.
They're called cafetoriums.
Wait, is that a legitimate term?
That's a legitimate
my
thing.
gosh.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
funny.
and they're always bad.
They're always bad. They are bad, you know, but you know, for us though, I mean, just finding any space that we can sing in that is big enough to fit us is going to be beneficial, you know. And I think of Singers in Accord too. You guys are at Lutheran Church of the Good Shepherd. You have some options there if that space is available, so which is a good thing.
Right.
At our church, in our choir room, the only rehearsal that's taking place is our modern worship team, and that's 5 people in a room that can hold 50. And that's the only singing that's happening in that room. So yeah, I think the bigger the space, the better. And I know in our sanctuary, we do not have the air exchange that I would like, but it is a bigger space.
One thing that Stephanie brought up, and I know you all feel it also, is the love we have for choral music, how it feeds our spirit and our soul and our community. And when we haven't had it, there's been a real emptiness and grief, and we are all looking forward to, through flexibility and collegiality, that we're going to figure it out, and we're going to have a chance to sing together soon. And Singers in Accord sure appreciates all of you and your input and being part of our community. Thanks again to all the attendees. If you'd like to learn more about Singers in Accord, see our website, see our YouTube channel, watch for us on Facebook, and we hope to be sharing more music and more conversations with you soon. Thanks, Linda, Taylor, David. Thank you, Dan. Again, thanks everybody for coming.